I want to bring in Stephen Haggard for more insight. He's the director of the Korea Pacific program at the University of California, San Diego. He's written extensively on the DPRK, its politics, its economy. Talk to us about the significance of this anniversary. What are we also likely to see, would you say?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about it is what we're not likely to see. I think many observers thought there was a possibility that North Korea would launch another satellite, or what they call satellites, which is in fact a kind of proxy for an intercontinental ballistic missile program. It looks like, from evidence at the Sohae test site, that that's not going to go ahead, but this is going to be a major military parade.
Are you surprised at the developments you were saying? We're not likely to see that. What's the significance of that? Why do you think that is?
Well, there are two possibilities, and we don't really know. One is just simply that there are technical constraints on their ability to undertake the launch. The other is that China has clearly been very unhappy with both the nuclear threats and the missile developments that are taking place in North Korea. So it's possible that Beijing exercised some constraint on Pyongyang as well.
Stephen, let me ask you about the thawing that we've seen in recent months. You know, the United States with Iran, the West with Iran, the U.S. with Cuba. What's the likelihood we'd ever see that with the DPRK?
Not impossible, but those circumstances in both of those countries were really driven by fundamental changes at home. You know, the election of Rouhani obviously signaled a somewhat different direction in Iran. And similarly in Cuba, the transition to a new leadership, there was a willingness to open up. And Cuba doesn't really play a security challenge. The problem we have with North Korea is that they're broken out. They actually have tested nuclear weapons. So, and they seem to be interested in keeping them. And as a result of that, it's been very difficult to reopen negotiations because the major issue of interest in the United States is getting North Korea back into its obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty.
What about talks with the ROK? Do you see those going anywhere?
Well, that's actually where the action is at the moment. This incident that occurred along the DMZ in August, where two soldiers were badly wounded by a landmine that was planted by the North Koreans, actually resulted in an agreement between the two sides to undertake some talks about family exchanges and perhaps exchange of NGOs coming from the South into the country. So right now, there's always discussion of the possibility of getting back to the nuclear six-party talks. But what's likely to happen are these slow incremental steps on the North-South front.
The DPRK always seems to be a mystery to the people of the West. So I'm curious, what do you look for when it does open up, you're able to watch celebrations like this? Anything that you keep your eye on?
Well, I think one of the things that I watch myself, in addition to leadership changes, which of course have settled down somewhat since the death of Kim Jong-il in December 2011, one of the things we look for is evidence that the country might be moving in a Chinese direction with respect to economic reform. And we do see the government tolerating markets to a greater extent than they have in the past. And particularly Pyongyang, you see a lot of investment in Pyongyang. Now, I think most analysts, like myself included, thought that this might lead to some relaxation of tensions with respect to the nuclear issue. But what surprised us is the government seems to be doing both things at once. That is, undertaking some cautious reforms, but also stating a willingness and interest to keep its nuclear weapons.
Stephen Haggard joining us from Southern California. Thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.